So this is part one of my new sunflower fused portrait thing that's going to be a little bit abstract. Right now I'm just placing some colors down on my palette. The colors that are already there were placed there for my final touch-ups of my Iceland Blue Lagoon painting, and they are colors that I figure I'm probably going to need for this painting as well, and I didn't want to just get rid of them. So I just kind of built on the palette I already set up and just placed other colors that I'm going to need down there, and then I can start with the painting. So now that all my colors are placed down, I'm starting off with titanium white, radiant violet, and Naples yellow hue, burnt sienna, some cadmium orange deep, some cadmium red light, a little bit of cadmium lemon. I'm just actually creating some skin tones here. I do have some solvent-free gel on my palette, but that was for my Blue Lagoon painting, and I actually don't need that solvent-free gel right now. I reserved that for the final details, so I'm actually going to mix some Galkyd and Gamsol of 50-50 ratio, and that is going to be my medium that I'm going to be working with for the very first color layer. And that's what I actually started with. It just dried up, so I need to mix a new batch. So I'm just pouring in some Galkyd, and then I'm going to pour in some Gamsol. I mean, it's not perfectly 50-50, it's just kind of what I estimate, and yeah. So I'm just gonna mix all that up, and then I'm ready to go. So yeah, you can see I have just like some very simple, basic skin tones, and then I end up impulsively using the solvent-free gel as well, which is fine, not a big deal. So then I'm taking more burnt sienna, more cadmium orange deep, some burnt umber, and cadmium red light. And I'm just trying to get an estimate of a dark color, so I placed some brush strokes down just as a tester. And this is like a shadow in the neck. I added a little bit of lighter colors to that with some more cadmium orange deep because I don't think it was quite warm enough. And so I'm just placing that color down there and into some of the dark warm shadows. This painting has warm skin tones for the most part. There are some greens and blues in there, however. So then going back to the lighter colors with all that still on my brush, you can see all these empty spots, and the reason my mouth is moving is because I was on the phone, which is very often what I do. Like, I'll be talking on the phone while I'm painting. I mean, I can still concentrate, so it actually helps me concentrate on the painting more because then my mind isn't wandering and getting distracted elsewhere. It's occupied. And yeah, that's why I often like to listen to audiobooks when I'm painting or watch YouTube videos or things like that, because it really helps me focus. So now I'm just building on some of those shadows on the left part of the face, which is hidden in the shadows. Let's see. Okay, taking some sap green just to bring into that color. And if you hear some sort of snorty, slurpy sounds, it's because Aries is under my desk because it's raining outside and he gets scared. Aries, hi. Yeah, so then picking up some of those lighter skin tones again, and I'm just trying to paint the area around the mouth. As you can see, that's still a huge mess. It doesn't look right at all. I'm just trying to get that whole area covered, and we are going to get closer in a second here. I just started filming from a distance. Then I brought in some alizarin crimson, some burnt sienna, some cadmium red light, and titanium white, and radiant magenta, and titanium white. And I am creating some colors that I want to use on the lips. I just took some ultramarine blue and dioxazine violet, and now I'm just trying to place those colors into where the mouth is. with some more dioxazine purple. And yeah, I'm just combining them on my palette. And then some more cadmium red light with the radiant magenta mixed in just to create like a brighter red color. I don't know if you hear the thunder outside, but it rains every single day in Florida right now, pretty much in the summer, multiple times a day. It could rain for 5 minutes and then it goes away and then it comes back again in 10 minutes and it's just all over the place. My garden is thriving, but it's not exactly the most convenient thing. All right, so we've zoomed in a bit here. And now I'm continuing on to the collarbones. I've filled in the mouth, which was all the colors that you're seeing on my palette. It was a bit of a challenge because of the angle that I was in. So now I'm just painting some of the skin tones surrounding the flower, the collarbones, the shoulder, that area. And the face, of course, still looks wonky. Like, once again, this isn't intended to be perfect right off the bat. I'm just laying down my foundation and then I'll detail later. I like the idea of painting figures that for the most part are more realistic and pristine, and then making the surrounding area more abstract, like the flowers fused into them. So then I'm using that bright light skin color that I brought some titanium white into and painting on the shoulder area / collarbone. More titanium white, using my medium gradually here and there, just adding it to my colors, just ever so slightly, just a little bit. You don't want to add too much because that will make it harder to work with. And I'm just filling in that whole shoulder area. So this small part here, I'm just double speeding here because it is pretty self-explanatory. No real detail happening. I'm just covering a surface area where the shoulders are. So now I'm going to make the color for the shadows. I'm taking ultramarine blue, dioxazine purple, burnt umber, a little bit more ultramarine blue, and I mixed it with whatever color was already there. So it's kind of like a grayish color. I even added some more light color to that and some of the warm redder tones, and then a little bit more dioxazine purple. And you can see that shadow where I'm putting it there. It's a little bit too dark, so I added some of the lighter tones and a little bit of radiant violet. I always keep saying violent for some reason. Violet. I'm just kind of also blending it with the lighter color, lighter skin tone I placed down earlier. And then taking some more skin tones, some of the more like beige looking ones, and blending it in with that color. And then I'm taking some more radiant violet into titanium white just to make that highlight color. Then some more titanium white and radiant magenta, Naples yellow hue with more titanium white, a little bit of medium, so it's like a very bright, warm highlight color. A little bit more radiant magenta into the color next to it. And I'm just placing down those pink appearing highlight colors into the lighter parts of the skin. Mostly on the side of the light source, which is left parts of different areas of the body, mostly you'll see that the left parts have lighter tones. Whatever is out in the light. These are all parts I will typically cut out, like that right there where my hand left the canvas. When it comes to my YouTube time lapses, I will typically cut those parts out because they're kind of pointless. So I just brought in some burnt sienna into that highlight color. And I'm just kind of filling in more of the arm there. The hand in the underpainting looks super, super odd. I'm probably going to struggle with that. I painted it on like real weird. So when it comes to having to detail that, it's probably going to be quite the challenge, but that's okay. Dipping my brush into my medium mixture there and into those mid-tone skin tones, I'm adding some cadmium orange deep and cadmium red light and cadmium lemon just to warm them up a bit and intensify them. And they're also going into that shadow I painted earlier. The tones on it were a bit on the colder side, so I decided to blend some warmer ones and paint them into there as well. And then also in that area, which is the right side of the arm, the part that isn't quite being illuminated by the light source directly. So there's going to be some shadow there, transitioning into the highlight on the left side of the arm, and similarly just all over. Then picking up some more of the highlight tones with the Radiant Violet. And then going back to titanium white, just adding more to that highlight color. You can see it's a bit brighter as I place that down. Adding more medium to my brush and some Naples yellow hue and titanium white just to make it a bit warmer. Highlights are never just a pure white color. I always try to mix something in with them, and just that very soft, subtle difference makes it look that much more real. And then going to some of the other tones like the burnt sienna skin tone mixture. And I call it the burnt sienna skin tone mixture because that's the color that's mostly there. And I do have my phone resting on my palette away from the wet paint, so that wasn't an issue, but then I get a phone call again later. So yeah. Back to that skin color again, adding some cadmium orange deep and some of the burnt sienna and alizarin crimson mix that was already on my palette, and then some more burnt umber, some quinacridone red and cadmium red light. Lots of varying warm tones here. I'm just warming up that shadow, placing it in various parts as well. A lot of times I'll create a shadow color, but it actually appears in several parts of the painting, so I'll just paint those parts simultaneously. So again, same colors, just kind of recreating them and re-picking them up on my brush again, and I'm just painting on some of the tendons in the neck, I guess, the space in between them. I don't know what that body part is called officially. So I'm adding some burnt umber to that warm color mixture there, just to create a slightly darker shadow in that area. And then I'm bringing that color into that shadow that's on the right side of the neck, right underneath the jaw. Taking some burnt umber into that skin tone color with some cadmium orange deep. It's like a similar color to the one that's in the shadow, it's just lighter, so it's creating like a transitional color that I can use to connect the shadows and the lighter parts. Now I'm picking up some burnt umber. There is a lighter color in my brush, which is fine. I added some ultramarine blue there, a little bit of cadmium red light, more burnt umber, more ultramarine blue. I'm just creating a darker shadow color for that place I was just painting, that neck shadow, just to fill in some of that underpainting that's still peeking through there. Kind of like extending it into the collarbone region, and then my camera decided to cut out, but you can see what I did. I did bring in a little bit of ivory black into that color as well, and yeah. So now I'm going back to some of the lighter tones. Adding titanium white. These are all pretty much the same colors I mixed earlier. I just kind of recreate them as I go along. And then this is some more parts of the arm, shoulder. And obviously the right side is going to have darker tones, as you can see even in the underpainting right where that hand is at the bottom there. So picking up some cadmium lemon, titanium white, a little bit of medium there, more titanium white, more medium, and I'm just creating this shoulder / arm highlight. There was a bit of a darker color you saw, I just painted over it. When I placed it down earlier, I kind of realized like, oh, this isn't quite what I need, so that's okay. And I'm just going to cover this area, trying to blend it in with the skin tones, the darker colors that are already there. And again, just gradually adding little tiny droplets onto my brush as I'm painting. Again, you don't want it to be too much because that will make the paint very hard to manage and work with. Too much medium is just gonna, you're not gonna get the effects you're looking for. So then I'm going back to the titanium white, just building on those arm lighter colors. Now going into some of the darker skin tones, not much darker, but again, it's just like a beige color in the middle there of my palette, and I'm also blending that in with the lighter colors that I just placed down. Just blending them together, trying to create like a very smooth gradient there and go over the underpainting. And then I'm going into some of the shadow tones. I did add a little bit of ultramarine blue to that. And I'm also just going to place those down above the shoulder where there's shadow. I did warm it up a little bit by adding some of those brown beige tones in with that. And I'm just creating this shadow that you can see starts on the side of the arm extends to the back of the figure, which you cannot see. Just kind of blending it in with the lighter colors there. Picking up the beige tones again. And then I extended that color into some of the warm tones and added some cadmium red light to it and cadmium orange deep. And then this is like a darker shadow where the hand is. And it's also the shadow behind the flowers that she's holding. And since the light source is coming from the left, flowers are obviously blocking some of that, so that whole section is going to be a bit darker. I'm just painting on the outline of the flowers, the shadow of the skin, and around the hand. Then I added a little bit more burnt sienna and alizarin crimson, and just extended the darker color into it again. Brought in more alizarin crimson into that, and burnt sienna and burnt umber, and again more alizarin crimson and burnt sienna, and then some cadmium orange deep. And just painting on more shadows. Just kind of blending it in out into the other skin, the lighter skin color, trying to create that transition between the shadow and light source. Light parts, I mean. The light source is not on the skin, it's away out there in the world, the sun itself. But yeah. I brought in some more ultramarine blue into that color. Cool it down a little bit, make it darker. And it's just going to go on some of the very edges of the shoulder and extend downwards a little bit. Had to warm up that shadow because it seemed to be a bit too cold, but now it seems to make more sense. And I also connected it into that dark shadow that's in the collarbone and the shoulder. And then I'm just dragging that color down a bit. Picking up more tones. You can see I'm just kind of combining it and then adding more red and orange. And I'm just, all my colors on my palettes just get mixed and jumbled together eventually. So that lighter color is sort of helping create this like soft transition between the shadows and the light parts. Picking up some medium and some more of those darker colors. And once again, going back to that very darker, or the right part of the arm and the shadow. Just extending it further downwards. Now I have to soften that line, that shadow line right above the hand, like it's kind of a sharp line. Have to blend it out a bit. So I'm just using these like circular motions to soften that up a bit. Now I'm picking up some of those darker browns and going back into that space there where the tendons in the neck, like the collarbones meet, I guess, but I'm just trying to intensify that a little bit. And I am speeding up these parts here just because there's more that I want to get to, and we are starting to run out of time here because painting, as you can see, is a very lengthy process, at least the way I paint anyway. But you kind of get the idea of the skin tones that I made for this painting. They just mostly consisted of burnt sienna, burnt umber, alizarin crimson, cadmium red light, Naples yellow hue, cadmium lemon, titanium white, cadmium orange deep, ultramarine blue, dioxazine purple, and a tiny bit of sap green. And also, I guess, a little bit of radiant violet as well for some of those lavender looking highlights that you can see, like on the jaw and some parts of the collarbones on the left side anyway. And yeah, I'm bringing some warm tones into the face now. Just trying to warm up those shadow skin tones because the face looks quite wonky to me at the moment. I'm just trying to get that area looking more proper and not so crazy. Then going into some of the darker tones. We've got more dioxazine purple there now. Trying to intensify those shadows. So now going into some of those warm mid-tone skin tones, and I'm just trying to work on the chin, blend out some of those shadows here, give it a little bit more shape, make this face look less crazy looking. Just working on that jaw there, the chin. It's still looking crazy, but that's okay. It'll get better. I just have to keep telling myself this as I get further into the painting. Yeah, it's just what you gotta do. Also, the nose looks messed up. Going in with my brush into my medium mixture, back to that same color I was just using. Now I'm going into some of the parts on like below the eyelid. You can see I already painted it on just a little bit. I kind of skipped that part there. There's just this light part above the lips that's driving me crazy. You can see it. It almost looks like she has a milk mustache, but that whole region, like the nostrils, the tip of the nose, like, oh, it's a mess. We need to fix that so I can stop losing my mind. But I'm avoiding it. I'm just painting more of the skin tones on the chest, the collarbones, the shoulders, whatever I can. And that's something I do a lot in my work is I'll avoid painting a part that scares me because it's at a weird angle, and I'll like paint everything around it and then save it for last. So yeah, I'm procrastinating on that mouth. So yeah, just gonna touch up these skin tones while I pretend like the mouth isn't an absolute mess. I'm just gonna speed this up here 4 times so we can skip through to a bit of an important part here. Alrighty, armpit, important part here. I'm picking up some cadmium orange deep and adding it to my highlight color, and just kind of blending all those skin tones out there. Kind of messed it up, I think, so I had to fix it. Yeah, it's like a very soft line where the arm folds, I guess, and I was just trying to create that there. But it also has a much deeper, darker shadow, which we're also going to paint. So I picked a detail liner brush. I'm taking burnt umber, dioxazine purple, and a little bit of ivory black. And I'm just adding some more burnt umber to that and some medium. And then some more ivory black. And so I have this very dark shadow color there. And I'm going to paint kind of like a triangular shape, I guess. but it's just like this deeper dark shadow, which is going to have, it's going to transition and blend into the lighter colors. If you just leave it like that, it's going to look strange. So now we're going to use some burnt sienna, some cadmium orange deep, and quinacridone red and cadmium red light. And so I have like this warm shadow color with some burnt sienna I just added, and I am sort of adding some of the lighter skin tones in there as well, you can see, so it's not quite so bright and saturated, ever so slightly lighter. And you can see I'm just extending that line there with that softer color there, and then also added some into that dark shadow, and then picking up some more of those brown tones and blending them with that really dark, deep shadow. And then just also painting the outline of these sunflowers. And you can blend with a tiny liner brush, and I do it all the time. I just use these kind of like back and forth or circular brush strokes, and you can see it's not that hard to make those transitions look soft. So that was relatively easy, I would say. Nothing too complex, but still pretty important, because like it's a pretty dark shadow there, and you want it to look natural. If you just left that super dark color without blending it, it would just look super cartoony and plastered. But as you can see, I am trying to create these soft transitions. So then going into more of the lighter colors, adding some more cadmium orange deep to that shadow color. Just building on that some more. Some cadmium red light, more cadmium orange deep. Blending it with those browns. And then just adding it. Looks like I needed some more cadmium red light. And yeah, I'm just trying to create a warm transitional brown that the dark color can quickly fade into and not look so plastered. So that's it for part 1. We'll continue more in the next part. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you guys are enjoying this demo so far.